sentences, like one or two sentences about what the policy is all about. No? And then of course, you have to put in the objectives of the policy. No, it could be the objectives could be anchored to your, let's say, core values or corporate values of the company. So you can put it there. No, and then also put some definition of terms, especially if you're going to use specific terms or acronyms. No, that normally it's your language or your lingo inside the company. So after that, you go towards the scope, meaning who will be affected by the policy.
Good evening, Ron.
Good evening to everyone, and thank you for the invitation here for HR Shouts and Whispers.
Yeah, so anyway, Ron, so this one, we're going to be a little bit like a technical webinar. Okay, because there are a lot of questions about HR policies nowadays. And the most common question is how to write HR policies. Okay, so our first question is actually, may format ba yan?
Well, yun nga, if I will answer that, no, of course, meron mga standard format that you can follow. Of course, you can start with a policy title, policy statement, no, and then of course, looking at the purpose, no, of the policies itself, and then I would always include yung probably definition of terms as well as yung scope, no, and eventually go to the policy statements, and then eventually go to the meat, no, of the whole policy itself. Yeah. So more or less that's the gist of coming up with HR policies. No. So that's how I would probably answer your question, your first question.
Yes, actually, thank you for answering that, Ron, because that's a very interesting question. Because I think you've also been with all the online fora, and then they always
Mm.
ask about a template for
Mm.
HR policies. Okay,
Mm.
so
Mm.
that's actually the most common question. Pahinging template, and then how does it look?
Mm. Mm.
And then ano yung linalaman nun. And then
Yeah.
yes, okay, you have to define your terms, okay?
Mm.
But usually I start with like explanation why the policy is there, like a
Yeah.
rationale. Okay, so
Mm.
that's what I start with that.
Mm.
Okay, what the policy is for, okay?
Mm.
And then number two is the goals of the policy or the
Mm.
objectives,
Yeah.
and then definition of terms,
Definition of terms. Yeah.
and then what else, the mechanics.
Yeah.
Okay,
Correct.
like so mga kasi may mga subheadings yan, so it's actually dependent on how you outline your document yun. So
Yes.
but may yun ang gist nun, okay? And then at the end kasi I put kasi clause at the end
Mm.
that this document or this set of policies are reviewed every year, okay? And
Yes.
hindi siya parang ano in ano yun yung in parang hindi siya parang it will be reviewed and subject to some revisions, okay, that
Yep.
will help operations,
Mm.
or 'di ba, parang it's supposed to produce parang yung some effect on operations or help
Yes.
management clarify
Clarify.
or make be more efficient with the spending of resources. Parang ganon. Parang it's always
Yes.
may mga
Correct.
disclaimer kasi natin yon. Kasi,
Yes.
and the reason why I always say that is because ako from experience, kasi
Mm.
I've been setting up HR departments
Mm.
for startups. Kasi pag
Mm.
startup, you will start with a very generous
Yeah.
program. for
Mm.
rewards. And
Mm.
then suddenly, parang pagka nag-mature na yung company, you will have to review and then take out some rewards or benefits.
Yes.
While enduring the pandemic, why don't you upskill in the comforts of your own home? Improve and add more certificates in your resume. Simple, direct, easy. Visit the playlist in our YouTube channel. Browse through our videos and choose the video that interests you. Send in your requests for a particular video and we will send back the certificate via email. Watch this full video for the details.
Correct.
Oo. So,
And
we all
normally, 'di ba, pag nag-start ka diyan, you have to see kung ano yung what is the capacity of the company in terms of what it can provide, 'di ba? So, always a general rule na don't exceed no what the company can pay or at least what the company can afford. Ayan. So, it's very important for you to take note of that. Kasi I've encountered also some people na of course sometimes no they get too excited to again come up with policies like benefits policies na baka hindi pa naman applicable during that particular time. So kailangan tignan muna natin kung ano yung work environment at the same time ano talaga yung need ng employees inside the company.
Yes, that's correct, Ron. Yung ano kasi, yung experience ko nga kasi, minsan kasi, especially with, ano, siguro, with, hello? Especially with
Yeah.
mga compensation-based problems or
Yeah.
compensation-based issues, okay? So, parang ang ginagawa kasi nila is people parang inano nila na pag ito na it's set in stone pagka naging policy na.
Mm, mm,
Tapos
yeah.
mahirap ng mabawi.
Mhm.
Kasi
Yeah.
yan yung mga common misconceptions. At kaya tayo
Correct.
kinaklaro natin yan at the end paragraph of
Mm.
the document. Para lang
Documents, yeah.
oo. Kasi para lang clear. Kasi I'll give you an example na nangyari sa akin. Okay, so
Mm.
the company was in operation na for 2 years. Tapos
Mhm.
meron silang mga yung sa conversion ng
Mhm.
leave.
Conversion of leaves, yeah.
Oo. But pag kinuwenta mo kasi yung conversion ng leave, parang sobra na. Parang
Mhm.
magiging ano, if yung kasi lumaki na yung company, nag-double na yung yung number ng employees.
Mhm.
Parang so magiging ano na siya, out of budget na siya.
Mhm.
So, yun yung nangyari sa
Yeah.
amin.
Mhm.
So, and mabuti na lang kasi ako rin yung naging consultant nila that time.
Mm.
Yung nangyari is yung napatupad na policy was the one that I edited.
Mhm.
Na merong clause yon sa paragraph. May clause yon doon sa latter part ng document that this is reviewed every year
Mhm.
or every period. But this is actually reviewed periodically and
Mhm.
the rewards and compensation benefits stated here will
Mhm.
be dependent on profitability of the company or
Mhm.
affordability in terms of parang ganon. Yun yung sinabi doon sa end paragraph. So, kaya makikita mo na ganun ka-transparent yon. So, yung time na ni-repeal, kasi anong nangyari, parang ni-revise
Mhm.
namin yung mechanics on conversion ng na remaining sick leave.
Mhm.
Kasi dati, meron silang 7-7 na leave, hindi sila
Mhm.
magsi-sick leave. So, yung buong leave credits na yon, VL and SL, hindi sila mag-VL, hindi sila mag-ESL, meron silang 14.
Mhm.
So, by the end of December, yung 14 na yon mako-convert.
Mhm.
Pag ginawa mo yon masyadong mabigat kasi ang bayaran nun, January.
Mhm.
So pagdating ng January, lean month, walang kita, magbabayad ka nung nung conversion na yon.
Conversion, yeah.
Yung client namin umaaray.
Right.
Oo, kasi BPO kami. So,
Right.
so ang nakita kong ano doon is papagamit na lang yung ano, yung lahat ng VL papagamit na,
Mm-mm.
isi-schedule. Tapos may ceiling doon sa number of ano sick leaves na i-convert, which is 5.
Mhm, mhm.
Pero yun, tapos ang bayaran nun divided pa.
Mhm.
Parang kumbaga um at ano the last week of January, first week of February.
Mhm. Mhm.
Parang yun yung bayaran nun. Kasi kailangan i-budget. Kasi meron pa silang mga, for example, 13th month pay, 14th month pay.
Mhm. Mhm.
Kaya medyo mabigat yung lumalabas
Mhm.
pagka binayaran yun.
Mhm.
So very important yun. And that's what you call yung it's the leave conversion policy. And it's
Yeah,
connected with compensation.
compensation. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
Ayun. So, maybe at this point, maybe I can share some of the no. So I prepared some tips and some additional information regarding HR policies, no. Ayan. So para to further substantiate itong ating this discussion, ano. So it again, for those who are listening right now, if you have questions, please feel free to uh give them to us, and then later on we will try to answer those questions.
Yes, okay. So, Ron, I'll give the floor to you, okay, because
Mm.
Ron prepared some parang basic guidelines on how doing HR policies, okay? So,
Yep.
we won't go into the types of HR policies yet, but this is like a basic structure for an HR policy. So,
Yes.
I'll give the floor to Mr. Ron Turla.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so I decided to prepare some tips, no, and in between I'll share also some of the experiences that I've had as well in terms of writing some HR policies. Um, Here are some criteria, no, that we need to remember if we are to write policies. So number one, para maging sound yung policy natin, dapat number one, we have to answer the question, does it reflect yung present or desired practices and behavior, no, that we want to see in the company? So that's one criteria that you can consider. No? Second, is it clear? Yung policy mo ba is clear? Is it definite? Is it explicit? Leaving no scope for misinterpretation. Kasi madalas ito yung nagiging again criticism when we write policies na it could be misinterpreted, no. So for this not to happen, it's important for us na siguro what we need to do is to be able to have other people read it, no, and have some comments. So I would suggest that you ask certain members or probably managers in your organization to be able to also read, no. Ayan. Number three, criteria would be, does it exist in the area critical to the success of the organization? No? So, yung policy natin, kailangan, it should always point out to how the company can be successful. No? So, wag lang tayo magki-create ng policy just for the sake of it. No? So, the policies are contributing to the culture and also eventually to the success of the organization. Number four is that, is it consistent with other policies? Ito, very important. Kasi di ba minsan, when you create HR policies, it comes to the point na minsan nagkakaroon siya ng conflict with other policies, no? And it's important for you when you're writing your policies na you have to review the other policies that you have which might be in conflict with what you're writing. So make sure that whatever you are writing does not, di ba, counter or even conflict with others, so that when you implement it, people will have clarity in terms of what you'd want to happen. Yun. So, number 5 criteria here is it practical in a given existing or expected situation? Remember, policies are guide for actions, no? So, I always remember that, no? Policies are guide for action. So, that means that you shouldn't try to cover too much or too little in terms of the policy, so kailangan sakto yung policy na ginagawa mo depending on the situation. So, one tip that I would always share in terms of writing policy is that you have to be observant of what's happening in your work environment. No? So, kailangan tingnan mo kung what are the needs of your employees, at the same time what is the directive coming from management, and you have to strike the balance of from there and be able to come up with some policies that will really address pressing situations, or even yung something that really needs something needs attention, no? So this criteria should be able to help you write, no, a sound policy. Okay. Here are some important importance of policies, no? So let me run it down for you, no? So one importance of policies is that it helps you delegate. So HR policies help managers um, operating at different levels with confidence without the need for consulting. So one good thing about when you write policies, there's no more need to be able to, di ba, talk about it, kasi the policy should be able to answer, no, for that particular area. Yeah. So second importance is that speedy decisions are made. No? So policies can accelerate decision making, no, by creating a blanket framework wherein employee decisions can be made. No? So more or less, a policy can also condense past experiences. Ibig sabihin, based on past or historical data, masasabi natin, okay, so we need to be able to uh, make such policies, for example. So, it could, again, concern benefits, salaries, for example. So, again, it speeds up your decision making. The third importance is coordinating the HR policies help in achieving coordination. So, in case na in the organizations, members are guided by the same policies. No, they can forecast more accurately actions or decisions. No, and more or less you have a steady course of action. Para wala nang parang more or less parang unplanned, no, or mga deviations na tinatawag natin. So there has to be some form of coordination when you write your policies. Ayan. Number 4, importance is better control. No, so as HR policies specify the relationship, no, shared between the organization, yung management and employees allows members to work sa achievement of the objectives rather than having conflict. Okay? So it is, again, creating policies or writing good policies is a way for better control. Okay? Number 5 importance for me is there's a standard for efficiency. So policies, HR policies for that matter, serves as a standard for the execution of work. No? So it enables management to view if they have to be translated into action by various organizations or not. No? So in this case, existing policies may be subject to, yan, sinasabi natin, amendment or refinement. So, it's very important when you're writing policies, just like what Tina has mentioned, na kailangan lalagyan natin ng portion in the policy that if you will be revising it, no, so you have to refer to a certain standard, no, that you have done in the past. So, it's very important for us na meron tayong standard na sinusundan, no, if you are revising from a previous policy, no, I've encountered that before when I was an HR manager, na merong mga dating HR policies, no, na ginawa yung predecessor ko that I had to revise, no, and from there I had to be able to refer to it, no, understand why such policy was actually created, and then ano yung binabago mo, no. So it's important for the writer of the policy, if you're the writer of the policy, na alam mo kung ano yung babaguhin mo and what would be the impact of such changes in the policy. And as a writer of the policy also, kailangan meron kang provision, as mentioned earlier, na pwede mong baguhin or may amendments. So may amendments na pwedeng gawin for the policies. Okay? Ayan. Number 6 importance is uniformity. No? So HR policies increases the chances of different people at different levels of the organizations making similar choices, no, when independently facing similar situations. So they make actions of the organization more consistent. So ito yung kagandahan ng having policies, no. So that whenever there is a question from management kung ano ba yung dapat nating gawin, the HR policies provides us such, no, yung uniformity. So whenever we're dealing with people, especially when it comes to benefits or salary issues, no, we would want to have uniformity. Okay. Number 7 importance for me is confidence. No? So policies create confidence in employees while confronting routine and recurring problems. No, they reduce the chances. If you have good policies, you reduce the chance for misinterpretation, misrepresentation, and yung mga friction na sinasabi. Kasi 'di ba minsan sasabihin ng employees na parang mali yata yung pagkakaintindi ng HR, no? So that's what you should avoid kasi kailangan yung policy natin kapag sinulat natin, it should be something that people should be able to feel that confident sila to be able to again go up to you and say, okay, so this is what we need to follow. Yan. So ito yung mga sinasabi natin na importance of ano. Now, allow me also to give you some principles. So kapag gumagawa kayo ng HR policies, here are certain principles that you need to remember. Okay. So principle number 1 for me is common interest. Okay? So pag sinabi natin common interest, kailangan yung ginagawa mong policies, kinakailangan kino-consider mo yung ano ba yung success for the company, ano yung interest ng employer, and then ano rin yung interest ng employees. Okay? So para hindi ka maging one-sided, sabi nga natin. No? So it should benefit all the concerned parties from employees to employer and also the government, no, in compliance. Kaya meron ka mga policies na kailangan in compliance. Okay? To whatever is the labor standard, for example, so that you will address the common interest. Okay, principle number 2 here is development. No? So the organization must provide ample opportunities for the growth of employees' personality. So when you create policies, kailangan merong aspeto ng development. No? So those who are reading and following the policies that you have should be able to, more or less see it as a way of training. No? Because when you write policies, it's in a way training. For example, yung employee discipline, when you discipline a person, let's say you ask them to write an explanation, no, and then you allow them to be able to provide yung kanilang side of the case. For example, as an HR policy, you're actually developing the character of that person so that yung, di ba, yung character, yung principle of honesty, integrity, for example. So in a way, when you write such policies, it should also include the development of people, no, inside the organization. Yan. Principle 3 for me is recognition of work and accomplishment. No? So in writing HR policies, there must be a direct relationship between work and accomplishment. So a job should provide for sufficient wages and benefits, no, that will enable the employee to have a comfortable life, at least.
Mhm.
So HR policy should take in consideration the employee's expectations, such as yung reasonable security, no? Yung security of tenure na sinasabi natin. And of course, yung security against accidents, sickness, and old age. Kaya tayo merong mga benefits, etc., retirement, and all this SSS and PhilHealth. So all of this really covers that we are recognizing the person working in the job and be able to really celebrate yung accomplishment of that person. And because of that, no, somehow, when you employ a person and because of your policies, no, you are making the life of that person a little bit better, no, than the others who are not part of the organization. So again, this principle is very important to remember when you're writing down your policies. Principle number 4 could be concerned for mga unions. No? So trade unions play an important role in the development of industrial relations. Yan, medyo that could be another topic, no, by the way, for HR shouts, ano. And the HR policy should incorporate the clause for amicable settlement of disputes. Kasi minsan, di ba, pag if it's a different work environment na unionize yung company, definitely may mga lalabas na disputes dyan regarding policies, no? So again, very important when you have unions inside your company that kinakailangan meron kang clause for the settlements. Kasi otherwise, pag hindi, no, magkakaroon kayo ng mga deadlocks, for example. So you need to have such mechanisms so that you can resolve through negotiations yung ating collective bargaining, especially for companies which are unionized. Ayan. Okay. Last two principles, no? Principle number 5 is participation in management. So, yung employees representative should be given participation in decision-making bodies. So, it's important that any policy or program, no, kailangan merong willful acceptance by the employee. No, ibig sabihin parang dapat meron siyang pagtanggap, no? Because again, it's part of the employment relationship, no? So if the decisions regarding HR affairs, no, are taken in the presence of workers, there should be better employee satisfaction. Okay? It will also minimize the resistance to change kasi alam niya may transparency. 'Di ba? Sabi nga natin minsan yung policies na 'yan, minsan employees would be suspicious of you na talaga bang pinag-aralan ng management or is it just the side of HR, for example? So you need to show people that there is representation, especially when policies are made. No? So ako, I remember in my experiences na, if there would be opposing views, for example, I would really call for other people because obviously, if you will just simply tell them na you just have to follow basically, but hindi nila nakita that there was really a deliberate process that you did in terms of doing this or creating the policies. They would probably have some resistance to the policies that you will be rolling out. So this principle is important in terms of making sure that people participate. No? So participation in management at the same time participation in employees. Principle number 6 is yung facing the changes. So employees would always resist. This is a reality. Changes that may seem inconvenient or unpleasant to them. So that's something to be expected. Changes may relate to loss of income, loss of status, transfers, or reassignment. No? Therefore, yung employee should be prepared by the management well in advance to face the change as and when warranted. Kasi 'di ba minsan magtataka yung mga employees, ay ba't biglang nagkaroon ng policy na ganon? 'Di ba? So, you need to be able to prepare people to face those changes kasi it will really come, no? So, how do you normally do it? No? So, you have to use several ways of communications, bulletin boards, company magazines, or whatever have you right now, 'di ba? Mga committee meetings, union meetings, or any other broadcast system, no? So, in this regard, management viewpoint should be reflected in HR policies. Kailangan, as we've always mentioned, that in HR kasi, it's a balancing act that you're representing management in terms of the policy, but you're also considering and preparing how will the employees take this? What would be the reaction and what would be your response to those reactions? So these principles will help us to be able to really craft good and effective HR policies inside the company. So I hope na through this very short sharing that I gave to you, these are some of the tips that I'd like to point out to you this evening in writing policies. Yan. So I hope you got some points, no, in terms of what I've shared to you. Ayan. So
We'd like to get reactions from our viewers. Okay, so we
Yes.
have viewers here. Okay, so these are people who have been following our FB Live presentation. So we'd like to get reactions. Okay, but my reaction is, okay, so when Ron explained it, number one, okay, the policy has to have an explanation why there's a need to have a policy in the first place. Okay.
Mhm.
Like ano tong mga explanations na to? Like for example, yung mga work hours.
Mhm.
So that has to be explained kung bakit ganito, and then that's management prerogative to set the work hours. And
Mhm.
then therefore, 'di ba? The management can sanction you if you do
Yes.
overbreak, if you are tardy, yung mga
Yeah.
ganon. So
Mhm.
gina-explain yon sa first part. Okay,
Yeah.
yung sinabi namin na format for the benefit of those who just joined. Okay, so there's a parang consistent format or a set of information that's needed for your policy. What's that again, Ron? It's
Okay.
the
Uh,
rationale.
that of course, if you go to the parang pinaka specific, you have the of course the policy title,
Mm-hmm.
and then the policy statement. Policy statements normally mga ano yan, very short sentences like one or two sentence about what the policy is all about. No? And then of course you have to put in the objectives of the policy. No, it could be the objectives could be anchored to your, let's say, core values or corporate values of the company. So you can put it there. No, and then also put some definition of terms, especially if you're going to use specific terms or acronyms. No, that normally it's your language or your lingo inside the company. So after that, you go towards the scope, meaning who will be affected by the policy. No, and then you go directly now to the specific statements of the policy itself. No, so yung policy statements, ang suggestion ko lagi is to always think about coming up with an outline, no, para maliwanag yung kumbaga you have to explain it in such a way that you're trying to guide them. As I've said, you need to guide them in terms of how to act on a specific situation or what specific behavior do they need to follow. Yan. So, yun na yung pinaka the long part of your policy. But again, ang importante doon is that you drive home what you'd like them to see, no, or paano sila dapat kumilos, or how are they supposed to act, no, or what will happen, no? So you need to be able to also put in mga scenarios, no, that can happen as part of the implementation of the policy, no, so ilalagay mo siya doon, no, so ilalagyan mo ng more or less explanation so that you can be able to get the uh, more or less the participation of employees na nasasabi nila na this is something doable for them.
Okay. So, Ron, can you tell us, okay, so what is the benefit of having a policy?
Yeah. Of course, yung benefit of the policy, as we've mentioned, is that it provides that kind of standard, the uniformity, for example, and at the same time, parang it lessens the chance that people will feel that they are being discriminated or even parang misinterpreted, no? So whenever you have policies, no, and I've seen this happen, especially when it comes to the aspect of compensation. Kasi 'di ba, compensation is probably in inside the company is probably one of the more controversial policy areas eh. Kasi kumbaga maraming pwedeng maging variations, or sometimes ay question nila yung nagpalit ka or nagbago ka ng formula, etc., or you had to correct what a previous implementation na mali pala yung ginagawa nyo, for example. And all of this, HR has to be able to have a good explanation, no? So pero eventually, when you create very good or standardized policies, you would notice na example, no, promotion policy, 'di ba? Sometimes promotion policies can be very controversial because whenever you give, let's say, kunwari, some departments would say, oh, I'll promote this person and this is the percentage that I will give. Pero
Yeah.
sometimes they will say na, is that really allowed, for example? And sometimes they would feel na some departments have more edge rather than the others. No? That's why
Mm-mm.
some people will have yung, ay parang buti na lang sila sa marketing, mas mataas yung kanilang promotion rate, for example, compared with others. So those are areas where you need to put certain standardization so that people wouldn't feel that they are being considered second class citizen, kasi nobody wants to feel, no, sabi nga nila, a second class citizen in a company, no. They would want that, whether you are from HR, from accounting, from IT, from sales or operations, no, it's just one company, as they say. So I would say those are some of the benefits, no, of writing down your HR policies.
So, Ron, I'll be flashing something on the screen. Okay, so I'll
Mm.
be sharing a slide. Okay, so this is a copy of yung can you see the slide?
Yes.
So this is actually a copy of the HR policies, okay, yung actually we have, kasi this is my presentation for a previous this is parang just an
The previous episode.
enumeration. Oo. This is on employee discipline. So we
Mm.
have yung policy on employment classifications.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we have that. So just to give you parang a sneak peek on the kinds
Mm.
of policies. Okay,
Yeah.
and then employee work hours, attendance, and punctuality. That's very popular,
Yeah.
and it's always contested.
Contested. Yeah. Correct.
So what else? Okay, so you have your
Mm.
timekeeping and
Timekeeping.
pay,
Mm-mm.
and
And
then
then
what? Mhm.
you have the employee code of conduct, no? Ayan, yeah,
Mm.
correct. And
Mm-mm.
then yan, employee movement, no? In the organization, yung mga possible transfers, promotions, or reclassification that might happen, no, to the employee. So that could also be a policy area, no? Ayan. Of course, anti-harassment, and non-discrimination policy. Ayan, importante rin that you put it in your list of policies to write for HR, because of course all of these things can possibly happen, and it's very important that HR is prepared to have policies in place that will cater or at least answer certain situations, no, na might come to the attention of HR. Mental health and employee wellness is again something that has become really a major concern, no? Ayan. So it's important for us to identify our mental health policies, kasi I think ang consciousness ng Filipinos right now when it comes to mental health medyo mababa pa, or probably very minimal yung naintindihan nila about mental health, no? So that's why I think in companies, you need to start writing down policies, particularly on how you should treat people who are basically, identified with mental health issues. No, yeah. So it's very important. Conduct and communication and use of technology. Yan. Uh, it's also a regular part of the policy. Ayan. Employee accountability. Yeah, correct. No, yung mga issuance of assets, no, or even yung mga properties that will be assigned to the employee. Yeah. So that will be something na um, you should write down, no, a policy. Yan. Training management, no? Wow, ito very common, 'di ba? Yung sa training management laging tinatanong yung training bond, 'di ba? It's a common question that I've always been asked na yung training agreement ba kailangan, no? And in the training bond or training policy, of course you need to be able to set ano yung policy ng company regarding people attending, or at least the company investing into training, no? So yung training bond is an agreement, it's an internal document, but again, no, don't treat it like the holy grail of the training policy, kasi sometimes employees could mistakenly, no, look at the policy na minsan natatakot sila of being under a training agreement, no? So minsan yun yung kaya nagiging allergic yung employee kapag nag-sign siya ng training bond, no? So
Mm.
ang purpose ng training bond actually is to make sure that the person who actually participated, whether it's an internal training or an external training, should be able to contribute back to the organization. So naglalagay lang tayo ng mga certain provisions like yung tinatawag kong compulsory service period. So pag sinabing compulsory service period, after rendering the training, how long, no, depending on the amount that was invested in the training, that will be yung period that you should render. Or at least, no, aside from just rendering, mas maganda for me, no, my suggestion is to create projects that the employee will be able to utilize yung kanyang knowledge, no, and bring back something to the company as a result of the training through projects or through certain improvements that can be made. Yan. So training management policy is a good, no, policy statement na pwede natin gawin. Ayan. Of course you have the sorry, ano yung FWA? Sorry,
Ito yung flexible work
flexible
arrangement.
work arrangement. Okay. Ayan. So flexible work, tama, no? So yung flexible working arrangement, yung mga work from home, reduce work hours, for example, etc. So you need to be able to also start writing down such policies kasi right now it's really very much applicable na gamitin siya, no? And then a very controversial no policy is whistleblowing, no? So I know of some company na meron silang whistleblowing, no? Although I think no, this is my opinion lang, no, in terms of whistleblowing policy, Filipinos tend not to, di ba? Medyo ano to, parang for probably if you're familiar with the US culture, hindi tayo masyadong comfortable with whistleblowing, especially inside the company kasi madalas ang tendency natin is pag may nakita tayo that somebody is doing something wrong, no?
You look
Depending,
away.
di ba, sometimes, people will say na, kaibigan ko ba to? Kaaway ko ba to? For example, should I report? For example, no? So, whistleblowing kasi, of course, really promotes integrity and honesty, sabi nga natin. Whenever there's policies, for example, you need to be able to really, parang tell it to management so that more or less it should be dealt with, no? So I remember I was dealing with this particular company, no, when I was doing their training. Yung HR manager shared to me that there was actually a itong whistleblowing policy was actually utilized, no, during that time, and there were some people coming up to them telling them that there were certain irregularities about a certain department, no, and it was very unfortunate kasi nung magte-training kami, those people were actually present, no? So, kaya I had to also manage that situation kasi nagkaroon ng konting tension, no, with regards to the whistleblowing kasi that was ongoing during that time in the company. So, again, yung whistleblowing is part, no, of the most common HR policies that you need to be able to write down, no? Medyo mahirap lang siya to implement kasi some people would really not participate or would be afraid to do some whistleblowing kasi sasabihin pa nila minsan as a joke na meron bang protection program or something na
Oo,
kapag
witness
nag-whistle
protection
witness
for
protection
whistleblower.
program. Sabi ko, well, that's in the government, for example. But inside the company, whistleblowing is simply, di ba, parang nakita mo yung isang bagay na sa tingin mo is against what the company rules and regulations are, no? As
Mhm.
a responsible employee or as a responsible member of the organization, it should be your interest to report it so that management can address it in a timely manner. Kasi sometimes dapat hindi gamitin yung whistleblowing to retaliate or at least parang take revenge for for somebody or to some people. So yung whistleblowing has to be a neutral policy of the company so that people will actually participate, no, in telling, kung may mga nangyayari talagang irregularities in the company. Yeah.
It has to
Yeah.
be kasi well-defined. Usually, it takes a long time to write the whistleblowing
Yeah.
policy. Yung experience ko nun, parang 2 years eh.
To write it
Yeah,
or
parang kasi 2 years kasi consultation.
yeah.
And then, there was like a third party that was actually,
Yeah.
contracted.
Contracted, yeah.
Oo, kasi parang pwedeng mag-hotline. Parang may
Yeah.
hotline na pag-reportan yung mga empleyado.
Correct. Okay.
Mm.
And of
Yun yung
course, no,
witness protection program
witness
nila.
protection program. Okay. That's why they don't want to
Oo.
to whistleblow, sabi nga
Mm.
nila. Of course, yung capping off yung list of policies that we have here, yung employee exit, no? I've always mentioned this that it's for HR, it's important that you have policies regarding your exit procedures, how people will resign or if you need to terminate, what would be the procedures that you need to implement kasi a lot of times dito nagkakaroon ng mga issues yung management as well as employees. For example, yung implementation of the 30-day 30-day period for resignation, for example,
Mm.
kapag magre-resign sila. So those things have to be written down kung ano ba talaga yung procedure ng company. How do you deal with employees who will resign, whether automatically or 'di ba, parang wala na talagang notice, etc. So you have to write it down so that people will know that you have certain guidelines depending on the situations that will come about, depending do sa situation ng employee. Yan. So, kailangan isulat nyo to because otherwise, you will have a lot of problems if you don't have policies, you don't have procedures to address different scenarios, no? From resignation to termination to a wall, or even yung mga employees na bigla na lang hindi na papasok, for example, or totally, you
No
wouldn't know.
show.
No show, for example, no? And I've encountered some companies na nag-no show yung tao, nag-awol, for example, and then somehow, for some reason, they had the courage to go back to the company and say, I'm still employed. Okay, so for some
Yeah,
reason,
that
so
happened to me too. That
yeah,
happened to me too.
so yung mga ganon, you have to be prepared for it. Otherwise, parang what will you do, for example, if that person was not actually processed properly? No, that's why I always mention this na whenever you have people who are going a wall or having parang undefined leaves or absences, kailangan meron ka na kagad mga procedures to be able to address them para hindi sila maging mga loose, sabi nga nila parang loose ends na hindi mo alam kung terminated na ba siya, wala na ba siya. So it's very important to manage the exit of the employee. So from employee contract to employee exit, kailangan you cover it so that you wouldn't have liabilities in the company in the long run. So otherwise kasi pag hindi mo clearly knows yung mga items o yung mga employees na supposed to be dapat either terminated na or nag-exit na or something like that, you would have a lot of problems in the long run.
Okay. So thank you, Ron, for elaborating on. Actually, that's no basic. This is a basic checklist for those who are setting up. If you actually are in the HR, parang bila kang na-promote as an HR manager.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then suddenly you are in the parang you need to have parang audit everything. So that's a basic checklist that you can
Yeah.
use. So we will be going back. So I will just be one moment. So I will be stopping my share screen. So
Yep.
there. So there's a question from one of our viewers. Okay, this is an interesting question. So people are talking about diversity and inclusion. How can you have a policy on diversity and inclusion, and how do you write that policy, Ron?
Wow. To be honest, no, this is probably something that I'm also not so familiar at this point, no, in terms of how this is written down. But um, I would say it runs also in the theme of yung tinatawag nating equal opportunity, equal employment opportunity na sinasabi natin that talks about yung non-discrimination, no. So for me, no, that's how I will address it, no. But I'd be honest to say na I haven't yet, encountered or at least written down such policies regarding that, no. So I'll probably give it to Tina for the for the
Well,
answer.
so the kasi the diversity and inclusion for me it's actually a philosophy. So that's why for me lang this is my interpretation of it, because we cannot have a policy for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I
That's
think
right.
you're right. You can make it into like part of your recruitment policy. It's like equal opportunity regardless of race or ethnicity, or employing people, PWDs. Okay, you're also
Yes.
open to do that. So that
Mm-hmm.
could be reflective in your recruitment practices.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then second is we actually have some when we enumerated the types of policies, you can also have that in your non-discrimination policy. Okay, yeah, like in compensation, you mentioned
Mm.
that already. And then,
Mm.
so it's not that it's not a document that you will have a policy with the title diversity and inclusion.
Mhm.
It's something that's embedded in your practices
Yes.
and in the
Yeah.
aspects of HR. So yun yung aking interpretation. That also with the one thing, because I'm in communication before being HR, yung conduct of communication then and use of technology, especially for work from home. Like,
Mm.
we specify, syempre sinasabi nila hindi na dapat daw ituro. Pero
Mhm.
sa tingin ko, kailangan natin i-specify that people should be respectful of one another sa language. And then,
Yes.
'di ba? And then to resolve differences before filing complaints.
Mm. Yeah.
I think, kasi ako nilalagay ko yan sa communication policy ko. Kaya may conduct of communication and use of technology
Yes.
ako even
Oo.
before work from home. Kasi sinespecify ko yan na before mapunta sa HR, kasi ako HR ako. Ngayon lang
Mhm.
ako sa operations ulit.
Mhm.
Okay. Pero sinasabi ko yan sa mga line managers na what you should do is resolve it muna. And then if you
Yeah.
cannot really resolve it, then you elevate it to HR. Like to me,
Mm.
yan yung first principle. Yung
Yeah.
second principle is pag nakita ko na, kasi there were some points na parang may mga uncleanliness. Kasi particular ako sa 5S doon sa
Uh-huh.
office namin dati. May
Mm.
mga uncleanliness, mga ganon. Ako mismo, kinakausap ko yung line managers na,
Yeah.
kasi sa akin, it's bothersome kasi, yung pag-maintain ng workstation,
Mhm.
part yun ng disiplina ng isang tao. So,
Yeah.
tsaka yung mga sakit sa pantry na mga
Yeah.
iniiwan na oatmeal. Alam mo yung ano,
Oo.
yung spoon na ginamit, basta lang nilapag sa table.
Right.
Mga ganon. So, particular ako doon. So,
Mm.
we have yung mga, kasama yan sa safety and health policy namin.
Yes.
So,
Oo.
oo. Pero yung diversity and inclusion na yan, mahirap yan. It's a concept. It's a philosophy kasi. So, this
Mm.
one, oo, part yan ng culture ng company. So that's why hindi siya pwede ilagay na may title ka na,
Yeah.
'di ba? Parang we're practicing diversity and inclusion. Parang ganon.
Hindi kasi 'di ba when you talk about diversity, inclusion and parang
Madami
it,
kasi, 'di ba?
it runs throughout the whole HR functions sa pagtitingnan mo as you've mentioned, 'di ba? From recruitment pa lang to compensation to employee discipline. So all of those areas for HR, you can actually practice yung diversity. For example, when you recruit people from different backgrounds, there's already diversity, no? And then inclusion is when you try to talk to people, no, in terms of communication, talagang masasabi mo na no, you cater to different types of employees, for example, regardless of what preferences that they would have. So kung titingnan mo, it's already, tama yung sinabi niya, embedded siya. So HR definitely should be able to embrace such principle, sabi nga natin.
Oh, kasi that's the essence of having an HR and having a positive culture and positive environment, 'di ba? Being
Yes.
inclusive kasi
Mm.
people have a right, equal opportunity to be
Yes.
selected, okay, and
Mm.
hired by your company, and then
Mm.
also promoted and
Yes.
prosper in your company. I think that's
Right.
the essence of it.
Mm.
So, kaya when people ask me, wala naman talagang document na gano'n. I think what they're confused is yung mga aligning it to yung mga issues, and then yung mga
Mhm.
Safe Spaces Act, yung mga gano'n.
Mhm.
For me
Mhm.
kasi, if the if the formulation, I don't know if you would agree with me, but if the
Mm.
formulation of your, kasi we've been talking about yung employee value proposition here for a
Mhm.
long time, kasi George and we went back to revisiting that. So
Mm.
employee value proposition is what your company stands for, diba?
Mhm.
And it's a philosophy in your company. So for
Mhm.
example, you value people, and you value what yung skills nila. That's a philosophy. So
Mhm.
therefore your practices would be parang progressive for me.
Mhm.
So all these policies, naka-embed na dun yung diversity and inclusion. I
Mhm.
don't really need to be very specific na parang we are aligning to the Safe Spaces Act, or
Mhm.
we are parang promoting LGBTQ. You
Mhm.
know, we're not discriminatory, pero we also want to be to be like neutral and
Mm.
balanced. Oo. Parang
Mm.
we're not
Yeah.
really particular to any parang gender as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So, yun lang siguro ang aking thoughts doon. I mean,
Right.
it's, kasi being HR, tama ka. Parang we're inclusive. We talk to a lot of people.
Yeah.
We
Parang
reach out.
hindi mo naman pinipili yung who you're going to talk with. So it's something na part talaga ng practices ng HR to be able to talk to diverse type of people regardless of kung ano yung nakikita mo or ano yung perception mo sa kanila.
Yun. So, yun lang yung masasabi natin on diversity and inclusion. But
Mm.
yes, it's important to also bring that up because people also they want to clarify what it means to be, inclusive. So
Mhm.
for me, the fact that we are looking at skills rather than
Mhm.
what's the surface or the physical or the
Mhm.
physicality of the person or the nationality of the person, that's already being inclusive kasi
Yes.
everyone ngayon has equal chance to be in your company, yun nga, and then
Mm.
progress. So,
Yep.
so we're going to say hi to our friends. So we have a lot of friends here. So I'm glad that Edison Andamo is here watching. Okay, so hi Edison, how are you? I hope you're feeling well. Okay, and then we have Mr. June Espacio. So his comment. Okay. Uh, anyway, Miss Sally Ulanday says, thank you for answering my question. And then June Espacio said that another is being prospective or retroactive, so with regards to application of policies.
Policies. Yeah.
Mhm. And then the choice of words is very important in the writing of policy. So one simple mistake will change the tenor of the policy. And that's may or shall. Ano nga ba? Dapat ba may or shall? Or
uh,
will?
Yeah, well, for purposes of, 'di ba, parang when you write it, I would always follow that when I use shall, uh, 'di ba, normally it makes the policy with more command, no? Parang yung
Wala
may
siyang choice, authoritative yung shall.
yung
Parang
may
thou
kasi
shall
medyo
not
parang
kill.
tentative. O parang pag may kasi medyo parang tentative ka, 'di ba? So,
Parang may choice. Oo.
so yeah. So that's my take on writing that policy.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm glad you brought it up, Mr. June Espacio. And of course, I agree naman. Kasi pag shall kasi, authoritative. And then, yung may kasi parang may choice.
Mhm.
'Di ba? So, yun. Siguro lang tayo, be conscious of the linking verb. Okay. Pero ako kasi, I don't really, yung may kasi, sa memo ko lang yan nilalagay pag binibigyan ko ng choice. Pero
Mhm.
yung shall, talagang shall will. Parang it's very definite ang tone. Kasi
Yeah.
syempre, dapat may air of authority ang ating mga policies. Kundi palaging kinokontest siya.
Mhm. Mhm.
Itong natin, Ron, okay?
Mhm.
Uh, may kasi, may school of thought. Sabi nila, get the buy-in of people. So is it
Mhm.
important kasi minsan yung HR pag gagawa ng policy, kailangan pa bang i-consult ang mga tao, and what instances can the HR consult people, and what kinds of policies should HR just keep to themselves and just have it approved by management?
I would say, no, in terms of yung consulting with your employees, anything that will affect yung employees' welfare or their yung kanilang tinatawag na well-being should be consulted with employees, no? But things that has concern with the operations of the business in terms of process or procedures, for example, I would say na, of course, you need to be able to listen to management as to what they would like their operations to be, which is again yung sinasabi nating management prerogative, no? So I would always just consider yung employee's point of view kapag when you implement the management prerogative, will there be any parang negative effect? For example, yung mga transfers or yung, whenever you do reorganizations, for example, if that will affect people's standing or people's jobs, for example, then that's when you need to be able to see whether kailangan ko bang kausapin yung employees to consult with them. So, I think dito pumapasok yung establishing a good communication line with them na from
Mhm.
time to time you consider them. But again, hindi naman ibig sabihin no that all policies have to be consulted with all of them kasi that will parang cripple your efficiency whenever you're creating policies kasi obviously you cannot get everyone's approval every time, di ba? So some people will really be not so favorable with such, no? Yung mga especially yung mga policies that tends to put order or discipline kasi some employees gusto nila medyo flexible, di ba? So in that case, you need to be at least on the side na kailangan natin maglagay ng order and discipline. That's why we're setting this policy. So, but on other cases, then you can definitely ano naman, consult with employees so that you will see or at least hear from them what would be their side if such policy is implemented.
But I think depends on the policy. Okay, like for
Mm,
example, if it's something that's for me, kasi when it's operations and then standards of behavior, that's management prerogative. Okay,
mm,
but yung mga ano, like for example, kasi sometimes, 'di ba, nasa ibang generation tayo, and
mhm,
we want to also find out what's motivating in terms of uh, incentives. So
mhm.
we can try to consult people kasi baka iba pala yung gusto nila, hindi pala monetary. Hindi pala monetary.
Alright.
Baka iba yung gusto nila. So we try to consult kung ano yung line managers. Okay, so
Mm,
maliit muna na portion ng ng company, like line managers, para hindi
mm,
masyadong kumalat yung information. And then pag hindi pa rin ikaw kontento, pag you're still
mm.
trying to do some research, you can try to ask yung mga senior employees na
Yes.
gano'n. But yeah, definitely you don't need to consult them most of the time. I mean,
Mm,
it's kasi as an HR, you should be able to gauge na kung ano yung pulso ng ng
mm,
mga employees, okay? And then you can also, 'di ba, utilize tools din, okay? Like
mm.
yung mga climate survey, mga focus
Yes.
group.
Focus group, yeah.
Mm.
Correct.
So, hindi naman kailangan palaging nagse-survey tayo. 'Yon. So,
Mm,
parang it's a mix of tools, okay?
mm,
And then ang importante is how efficient you can be in drafting
mm.
the policy, okay, and making those recommendations, 'di ba? Kasi
Yes.
meron din tayong element of efficiency dapat sa ating
Yes.
trabaho.
Correct, oo.
Kasi
Kasi of
so,
course, 'di ba, at the end of the day, you parang management will see you in terms of how you implement, how you formulate the policies. So meron ka, definitely may timeline ka na dapat sundin with regards to writing and then eventually implementing the policy.
yes. Kasi yung itong yung whistleblowing policy, inabot ng 2 years yan. Kasi the concept was, parang
Mhm.
yun nga, magkakaroon ng checks and balance in the organization.
Yeah.
yung iba kasi, correct me if I'm wrong, no, pero
Mm.
they've actually managed to tweak the whistleblowing policy. Meron silang yung good governance, parang ganon,
Okay.
good
Good governance.
governance committee or
Mhm.
good governance standards. Okay,
Mhm.
so it's not really parang ang dating is merong whistleblower na magsusumbong sa'yo. Parang
Mhm.
the HR, or actually may sumbong pa rin, but it's
Mm.
more of, kasi halimbawa ikaw ay top management na, ito
Mhm.
yung standards na ine-expect sa'yo, yung on
Mhm.
ethics, okay? And then pag may report doon, kakausapin ka na talaga. Parang then it's
Mhm.
very benevolent, very
Mhm.
very hindi siya yung parang merong may whistleblower tapos magkakaroon ka ng hearing and etc.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oo, hindi ganon. But if eventually the outcome is parang kung talagang guilty ka of a
Mhm.
violation,
Yeah.
parang you will be retired or you will
Mhm.
be as parang graceful exit.
Graceful exit. Uh-huh.
Oo. Yun yung parang good governance, ang hindi actually siya policy, it's parang standards of good governance and
Uh-huh.
good governance committee. Parang ganun yung ginagawa na.
Mhm.
Kasi yun nga, parang magsusumbong sa isa't isa tapos may vendetta
Yeah.
pa.
So diyan talaga lalabas yung ano no, yung kung ano yung relationship ng mga employees to each other, and makikita mo kung ano talaga yung informal culture inside the company, kung sino yung mga whistleblower, sino yung magkakaibigan, sino yung mga hindi favorable with some people inside the company. Yeah.
Kasi meron kami like meron kasi kaming policy noon in one company that I worked with. Hindi ka
Mm.
pwede tumanggap ng gift from a
Mhm.
client.
Right.
So, kahit ano yung rank mo from the rank and file, okay,
Mhm.
from the lowest to the highest, hindi kayo pwede tumanggap ng gift.
Mhm.
Kahit Christmas. So, pagka Christmas, yung may nagpapadala sa amin na
Mhm.
client, dinodonate yon as part of the raffle.
Mhm.
Kasi bawal nga tumanggap. So, that's one policy na ang yun nga yun, ang title doon is uh, parang parang it's one document, okay?
Mhm.
Tapos inaano nila yung ethics.
Yeah.
Oo, yun. So, parang ano lang, it's how you package the policy. And then, yun nga, sabi nga ni Mr. June Aspasio, it's your use of words. So, imbes na naging
Yes.
negative yung outcome, naging positive. Kasi lahat ngayon ng mga tao, gusto makatanggap ng gift yung mga bosses
Mhm.
nila kasi dinodonate pagka Christmas for
Right.
raffle.
Oo, correct.
Oo. So, ganun ang naging effect. So, parang ina-anticipate mo rin kasi yung effect sa mga tao nung policy. So,
Yes.
and then what we've seen, ako from what I experienced, if your policy is parang negatively framed, yung
Mhm.
effect nun, negative sa culture.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oo. That's why you never say, parang hindi na nga uso yung whistleblowing policy kasi meron siyang connotation na, yun na nga, parang merong nangyaring crime.
Oo, na parang yung pagsusumbong becomes negative for some people, especially sa Filipino culture. 'Di ba?
Oo.
Pag yung ganun yung parang the way you address the situation, then you become parang the bad guy, sabi nga nila.
Yes. Oh,
Mm.
you become the bad guy tapos yun nga parang nagigi-guilty ka rin, 'di ba? Kasi
Right.
natanggal siya sa trabaho mo, etc. So,
Or
yun.
minsan they also say, 'di ba? I've heard this at some point na minsan yung whistleblower parang kasama rin siya doon sa sa actual
Kaya
actual
niya
crime.
alam. Well, it's
Ah,
true. Kasi yung nag-whistleblow there was this company that I've worked with, and then
mhm.
yung kaya namin na nakuha yung chain ng mga Kasi parang ang nangyayari na may nawawalang mga spare parts.
Mhm.
Tapos napupunta siya sa black market. So ang
Mhm.
nangyari was parang there was one that we caught
Mhm.
and then parang siya yung nag-whistle blow kasi parang mawawalan na siya ng trabaho. Gusto
Mhm.
niya everyone goes down with him. Parang
Uh-huh.
gano'n. So kasama rin siya doon sa ano. But in return, gusto lang niya na graceful exit.
Mhm.
Ayaw na niyang magkaroon daw ng record kasi natatakot naman siya na baka ano pa mag ano pa kami, pumunta pa kami sa para mag-file
Mhm.
pa kami ng qualified theft, parang
Mhm.
gano'n. Ayaw na
Mhm.
niya. So, that's actually a sad ano turn of events. So,
Mhm.
oh, kaya yun nga from what I experienced, pagka negatively worded yung policy, most likely
Mhm.
yung outcome nun negative sa culture.
Yeah.
So, kung sa ating viewers, that's one learning that ano also went through. So kaya nga yung effect ng words and then yung choice of words,
Yeah.
titignan nyo rin.
Right. So, ayan, kaya I've said no earlier na whenever you're writing down something, it might be good for you to let other people hear it, no, or at least parang other people can give you feedback kung ano yung dating or ano yung impact ng policy that you will be communicating.
Pero hindi na ginagawa ng policy yung mga nawawalan na na food sa pantry. Yeah.
Nawawala ng
Oo, kasi sabi nga ni Ron, the policy should have some effect on the company's success. Okay,
mm,
so there are certain things. Siguro this one can be addressed na by 'di ba? By maybe the first people should syempre have good manners, 'di ba? And
yeah.
have discipline not to get other people's food, or if you really are hungry and you want yung spaghetti ng coworker mo, magpaalam ka naman. Parang ganun.
Yeah, it's part of good manners sabi nga nila.
Good
GMRC.
GMRC. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but going to GMRC, so GMRC and bad behavior. So, usually people are saying, huwag na natin i-policy yan, don't write it into a policy because that should have been GMRC or kailangan pa ba sabihin yan? What's your take? When you draft your employee discipline policy, so there are certain violations, okay, that are included. And kailangan ba super, ilan ba dapat ang nakalagay na violations doon, Ron?
Well, I guess no, yung in terms of I mean putting out yung the right conduct and also yung negative no na sinasabi natin. You should also temper yung in terms of how yung words that you're going to use, especially with regards to your code of discipline or code of conduct na when you write it down, it should always be to that extent na merong positive conduct at the same time you identify yung mga negative talaga so that they can kasi at the end of the day sinasabi natin when you discipline people you offer them the choice of as an adult person inside the company you'd want them to make a choice kung what do they want to follow or at least what kind of action would they be amenable to no kasi yung actions nila would always be the basis for your discipline if ever na sabi nga natin the code of discipline, for example, as a policy, becomes now parang a way of assessing kung ano yung naging behavior ng tao. So, you can write several, types of negative behaviors. Pero, one of the things I've learned over the years is that hindi mo naman pwede ma-cover lahat, no? Because there are so many things that are happening right now na minsan parang hindi naman siya kasama dun sa code of conduct. And some people, minsan they're hard-headed to that extent na oh ma'am hindi naman kasama dito sa policy yan for examples and they will try to reason out no and in this case kailangan si HR has to be very careful at the same time kailangan intindihan mo kung ano yung situation and what behavior covers that in your policy kasi otherwise pwedeng ma-reason out ng employee yung sinasabi niya in terms of yung excuse, no, for that behavior. So you need to really understand what are the different behaviors na that can be really sanctioned, no. One particular behavior that I remember na medyo, you don't need so many explanation is parang fraud, 'di ba? Yung sabi nga natin yung parang any act of fraud, for example, as part of code of discipline, pwede nating masabi na it could be sanctioned by probably suspension or even termination, no? So parang yung fraud kasi, if you elaborate it further, no, baka mangyari ang negative effect sa employee. Pag nabasa niya yung code of discipline, marami pa siyang maisip na ibang ideas of defrauding the company. 'Di ba? So, mas maganda na lang lagay mo doon fraud, for example. So, dinaya mo yung company. So, whatever that is, no? Kung ano man yung paper trail na 'yan, then it could be considered a disciplinary action. Yan. So, those
Yes.
are my thoughts about sa code of
Correct ka
discipline.
dyan. Ako naman, yeah, I'm actually nodding in agreement with Ron. Usually kasi when I create a code of conduct, it's actually a few, well, I usually have a part on standards of behavior. So what's
Mm.
expected? You're supposed
Mm.
to be punctual. You're supposed to ask. Don't be an insubordinate. Meaning to say, yun nga, yung communication mode, respectful ka, etc. So I have that part. And then
Mm.
I have, I only have, I think, ang tawag ko nga dun, seven deadly sins. Okay?
Okay.
Parang, first is, wag kang tardy. Okay? So you should be yung opposite kasi nun is punctual. And then,
Mm.
yung habitual, yung absenteeism is that
Mm.
we don't want that. And then ito, horse playing.
Mhm.
Kasi nasa office pa kami nung time na yon.
Mhm.
Siguro sa work from home, wala nang horse playing, di ba?
Yes.
Okay. Pero I reminded them like when in a GC, you have to have pa rin, GMRC. Okay?
Mhm.
Walang abrupt or walang murahan, parang ganon.
Mhm. Yeah.
Ganon. And then we have yung fourth is actually ito, pag ang policy ko noon, pag nag-away kayo sa floor, naging physical kayo, pareho kayong masasanction. I will not investigate who started who.
Uh-huh.
Kasi it takes two to tango. Oh,
Right.
nagsapakan kayo, so pareho kayong kasama, pareho kayong masasanction diyan.
Right.
Okay, so that's not normal kasi yung magsasapakan na. Pero kasi
Yeah.
minsan kasi ang ginagawa nila, magtitease. They will tease each other, they will heckle.
Or ipo-provoke nila yung isa at isa, no? Yeah.
Oo, tapos makakapikunan na, tapos magiging physical na. So pag umabot na doon, nagsapakan na sila, makikita naman sa CCTV yun na nagsapakan sila dalawa, pareho na silang sa doon. And then, syempre bawal 'yon sa tao, bawal din nila gawin 'yon sa gamit. So they
Mhm.
cannot break any of the things intentionally.
Mhm.
Yung ganon. So that's alright. Tapos yung pinakaano is ako kasi I'm actually for freedom of speech,
Mhm.
but because I'm so conscious of our firm's personal image, we also parang because this is a belief. I don't like people, okay, going to social media to badmouth the company.
Company, yeah.
Oo, that's part of it. That's also part of our communication policy because we are a firm that relies on branding and image to be able to recruit our employees. That's why, diba, we take care also of our HR processes, diba? So, yun. Lahat yan connected sa branding ng
Yeah.
company.
That's right.
Oo. So, meron talaga akong policy doon. Some people say, oh, that's curtailing freedom of speech. Actually, hindi naman ako sa yung tipong titingnan lahat yung mga Facebook pages or whatever. They can actually gripe. Let's just not mention the name of the company. Ganun lang yung sa akin. They can actually vent sa social media, but wag naman yung sasabihin pa yung, or kasi minsan sasabihin nila nagalit sila sa coworker nila, bawal din yun.
Yeah.
Kasi that would create also animosity between coworkers, 'di ba?
Yes, yeah. Kumbaga parang in a way you're publicly kasi sinasabi nila that social media should not be parang more or less because of the freedom of speech, pero in a way if you're bad mouthing your coworker and using the platform of, let's say, social media like Facebook, it definitely destroys the reputation of this person given that it is publicly announced, no, and a lot of people are able to view it or even have a parang somehow parang sabi nga nila people don't want to hear kung ano yung away niyo, for example, kasi away niyo yan, for example, di ba? So it
Oo.
becomes na a non-issue for them. So but again, it also creates a bad reputation for the person being mentioned, di ba? Whether it's your boss, it's the company, for example, we have to be responsible for mentioning it, no? If it's really coming from our own frustration, then kahit na frustrated ka, kailangan yung ano pa rin, may element of tact, sabi nga nila, yung meron pa ring finesse doon sa pagsasabi doon sa mga uh, uh, things that you're not so agreeable with.
Actually, ako naman kasi I draw the line naman, as long as the name is not mentioned, okay,
Mm.
and then when you look at the profile, the company is not mentioned.
Mhm.
Kasi may profile tayo lahat sa Facebook. So, parang pag hindi identifiable, it's fine with me.
Mhm.
Kaya nga ako rin, in my present employment, mga gano'n.
Mhm.
Kasi since I'm engaged in Facebook, okay, I actually don't include my company. I say
Mhm.
confidential. Kasi baka lahat ng sinasabi ko dito about people management, feeling ng mga tao ko, sila yon. Hindi yon. It's my
Mhm.
general
Mhm.
state. It's a very general statement. So I protect also my staff and
Mhm.
from being ridiculed kasi boy baka kayo yung sinasabi, hindi yon,
Yeah.
it's actually my observation, and it's a general statement, kaya I
Yeah.
protect them by not also including my company in my profile.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Oo, kasi ano tayo ngayon we are at an age no, people are in social media, and
Mm.
kahit anong sabihin mo, image is image.
Yeah. That's right.
Mm, mm. Kasi there are a lot. So, I mean, for some people, if that's your style, I leave it to you that you're venting. But for me, that's not my cup of tea.
Mhm. Yep.
So, okay. So we will entertain one last question. Okay. Please elaborate on loss of trust and confidence. So, okay, there are a lot of questions about this. Loss of trust and confidence. Does that mean that only people in managerial positions can be fired due to loss of trust and confidence? Or can you terminate people because rank and file employees because of a wrongdoing, because you have an issue about their integrity, like nandadaya ng
Mm.
time card? So is that loss of trust and confidence?
Well, for me, no, ang perspective ko about yung loss of trust and confidence, let's say for example, for rank and file kasi, I seldom use it for the case of a rank and file employee. Let's say yung kasi depende sa kanyang responsibility. When you talk about kasi the loss of trust and confidence, normally in a company, meron kang mga positions that are really based on trust, no, of the management, for example. So doon mo pwedeng masabi that there was a loss of trust and confidence. But one thing I remembered, whenever you use the loss of trust and confidence, it should not be something na parang in one instance nagkaroon ng loss of trust, no? So normally the loss of trust could be, a series of incidences or situations that leads, the person in authority to lose the trust and confidence, no? So it could not be one incident alone that will say that I have lost the trust and confidence, unless it's really, sabi nga nila, parang it's really gross, for example, na may na-discover ka. But in that case, baka hindi dapat loss of trust and confidence kasi depende kung ano yung naging situation niya. But again,
Gross misconduct.
gross misconduct, for example, no? And normally, ang loss of trust and confidence, if you're going to use that, let's say, to terminate a person or an employee, it should be complemented, or at least parang you have to build up the case that there are other violations. Kasi if it's purely loss of trust and confidence, no, para magkakaroon ng question mark,
Subjective.
di ba, yung magkakaroon ng question na, bakit loss of trust and confidence? Pero pag tinignan mo yung mga NPE, incident reports, for example, mukha namang parang katiwa-tiwala naman yung person. For example, given also na, let's say, if you look at the background of the employee, medyo matagal na or something like, naging loyal to the company, etc. That's why they say sometimes yung tenure or years of service of the employee could run against, no, kapag meron kang ganyang case of loss of trust and confidence, or it could also work, it could work or against for you kapag yung mas matagal ka na sa company, pagdating sa loss of trust and confidence, di ba? So for me, yung loss of trust and confidence should be something na gagamitin mo siya, because when you look at the, all the circumstances or the situation itself, will lead you to believe that there was really a loss of trust and confidence. Ibig sabihin, dapat nanggagaling siya na dati
Obvious.
na meron kang trust and confidence, no? So kung hindi mo mapaprove yun, for example, let's say parang first time offense, so hindi mo pwede gamitin yung loss of trust kasi first time mo pa lang naman siyang bigyan ng ganitong responsibility. So it cannot be used, no? So kasi minsan, I've encountered na HR could be pressured by management to say, oh, sige, gamitin natin yung loss of trust and confidence. But in a way, if you're in HR, you have to stand your ground and also be principled enough na tama ba yung paggamit mo nun? Kasi otherwise, you could misuse it or abuse, no, yung term na loss of trust and confidence. So, as HR, kailangan tignan mo maigi kung ano yung circumstances, yung mga incident reports. You have to read it carefully and see kung ano talaga yung appropriate for the employee para maging fair ka din sa kanila.
Ako kasi I have a one, when I actually terminate somebody, I have to be able to explain it in one or two sentences why I terminated that person. You know why? Because if you pag masyado kang paligoy-ligoy, one
Yeah.
paragraph ka na nag-explain, hindi ibig sabihin, hindi yun yung tamang
Hindi
reason.
convincing, ano? Hindi
Oo.
parang
Parang hindi siya convincing, na watered down, 'di ba? Tapos kasi parang 'di ba sa klase, parang bakit nangyari 'to? Dapat one or two sentence, direct to the point, straightforward. Nangyari
right.
siya because ganito, 'di ba?
Yeah.
So he was terminated because this is what he did, and it was exacerbated by this incident. Ganon
Yeah.
yung formula ko kasi.
Correct.
So when that's my formula, I'm sure that I could face a labor arbiter talaga. So parang for me kasi loss and trust and confidence, you require more proof pa. So when that
Yes.
happens, that's a little bit parang ang tawag diyan yan you're walking on eggshells.
Yes.
So for me, loss of trust and confidence, it's you have to be from a position of trust or from you have a certain point in the organization. If you backtrack na timeline, there was you were really trusted.
Yes.
And then it was lost. Kaya nga loss of
Yes.
trust and confidence. Okay, in
Correct.
you.
Yeah.
So it could mean you're a manager, or you could be dealing with confidential information.
Information, yeah.
Yun yung aking definition dyan. And then I would not really use it on a rank and file, because if it's a rank and file employee, it would be something around siguro serious misconduct or gross, 'di ba? Gayon nga, gross and habitual, 'di ba?
Negligence, yeah. Correct.
So, yun yung aking take dyan. Kasi parang for me, it's easier to explain in one or two sentences why you terminated the person.
Yes, correct.
May formula.
Ayun.
Oo. And I always also, and then for HR people, if you're new as an HR manager, you have to be able to educate your boss
Mm.
or the owner of the company that you cannot really just terminate a person, okay,
Mm.
citing loss of trust and confidence, kasi parang
Mm.
vague din yun minsan eh, parang what was the incident that made him, diba, that made the company mistrust him, parang ganun yung
Mm.
question doon eh.
Mm. Hindi, tsaka remember 'no, yung loss of trust and confidence cannot be, parang recreated or parang, hindi siya puwedeng parang incidental lang, 'di ba? 'Pag for example na parang, all because you'd want to terminate the person, gagamitin mo 'yan. So, it has to be really, parang, sequential na some certain situations led to the loss of trust and confidence. So,
like for
hindi siya puwedeng yung tipong parang crinate mo lang, "Oh, kaya ako nagkaroon ng loss of confidence and trust with that person." Yeah.
like for example, yung manager nagli-liquidate.
Mm.
Halimbawa yung mga sa trips nila, okay? One time na merong disallowance, okay? Kasi parang may rules on
Mm.
'di ba, on expenses. Okay,
Yeah.
one time, okay. Oh, okay, fine, may disallowance ka. The second time, merong missing na receipt pero fina-file
Mhm.
pa rin niya sa liquidation. And then
Mhm.
another time, mas malaking halaga, wala na namang resibo. Yung
Mhm.
mga ganun yun eh, 'di ba?
Yeah.
Tapos pagkatapos nung kumausap siya ng supplier, tapos may report na kumukuha siya ng cut dun sa supplier. Okay.
Mhm.
So ganun yung mga kwento, may narrative siya.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes. Yun. So,
Okay.
loss of trust, I'll just mention Mr. Gainiel Ibardolasa. So, loss of trust and confidence usually goes with grave abuse of authority and is
Mm.
mostly imposed only to employees with high rank and positions in the company.
Mhm.
And those that are in confidential positions or handling
Mhm.
confidential information. For
Yes.
example, yun, secretaries, executive assistants, kinalat nila.
Mm.
Okay. Halimbawa, may narinig nga silang yung kwento ni Oliver. So, may
Mhm.
narinig sila, tapos pinag-usapan nila, kinakalat nila yung pinag-usapan nila kasi narinig nila two bosses talking about it.
Talking about it. Mhm.
Oo. So that can be a case, okay? Kasi nga it's something that will affect the company. Okay, may
Mhm.
mga iba kasi they just want to have like a yes or no answer. Can we use loss of trust and confidence as basis? Yun nga, yung prerequisite doon, it has to be a series of events, not just one.
Mm. Yes.
So that's
To
one.
Tama. So, I mean, if that will be the requirement, para talagang masabi mo or ma-prove mo that there was really loss of trust and confidence. Kasi always remember that, 'di ba, if you are terminating a person, it is the employer who is supposed to prove na tama or legal yung pag-terminate, let's say, for an employee. So, uh, on the side of HR, you need to be able to reason out, based on the incidents, for example, kung bakit you really had to, or you didn't have any choice but to really terminate the person because of such incidences.
Yeah. So, madami pa yan on policies, okay? And then that's why the policy kasi is actually, you can say that it's the consensus in the organization on how to treat such cases, diba?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people, I don't, if you, I would just like to comment, Ron, diba?
Mm.
Are always asking, oh, what if ganito? Bakit ganito yung treatment sa inyo?
Mm-hmm.
Tapos if magko-compare sila. So, yun nga, when you treat certain misbehaviors, okay, it's the same with awarding other behaviors, okay? It
Mm-hmm.
has to be parang, it's a consensus. So,
Mm-hmm.
what HR does, okay, so HR has to be very perceptive. And then,
Mm-hmm.
yun nga, parang nire-record niya and then parang drafts that policy and then top management gets hold of that policy, the draft of the policy, and then they talk in agreement, to reach an agreement amongst themselves na ito
Mhm.
na nga yung, this is what we stand for. Ganun ba
Mhm.
yun, Ron, yung policy?
Yeah, I think tama yung sinabi mo in terms of yung really getting the consensus is something na HR needs to do so that somehow, di ba, when you implement the policy, there is that kind of support given to the implementation. Uh, when when you get their different sides, no, sabi nga natin. So, of course, getting consensus is challenging, no? But again, it is the role of HR to do it, 'di ba?
And then there are a lot of tools on how to get consensus, diba?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Ron, what are you busy with this past few days? So I saw that you have like a blessing.
Well, I've been conducting training programs, so that's why it's one of the things that I really do, no, as part of my role as a full-time consultant. I also do speaking, and just to plug, no, I'll be speaking for Arriva this coming Friday for a summit for talent acquisition and onboarding, no. And for those who are listening right now, I'd like to invite you, if you're interested, to join so you can participate in that particular summit. So there will be other speakers for that particular summit. That's scheduled July 16 and July 22, no. And also, if you may allow me, let me just also promote my book, no. So ayan,
Sure.
so ayan,
Okay.
my book, sorry, nakakita ba, sorry, ayan, so
Pagka
my
may
book.
background, wala. Walang,
Ayan,
ayun,
the
yan, yan.
HR Compass. Yan. So, it is still available, but it is for download. Since of course it's pandemic right now, so we decided to make it really just an ebook, no. So it's available for download. So you can try to go to our website, yung www.talentreachconsulting.com, and it will lead you to the download of the book. Yeah. So
So that's www talent reach.
talentreachconsulting.com. Yeah.
So I'm actually typing it.
Yeah. Ayan. So when you log in there, meron na doon nakalagay kung how you can avail of the book, no? So magpa-pop up siya, and then if you would like to do it, then you just click, and then eventually it will lead you to download, no? And yan. Immediately once you have filled in the form, the download will be given to you, no?
Yeah, it's
With of
very
course,
convenient.
yeah, it's very convenient for people to uh to use, no, especially nowadays. You need parang handy guides, for example, or something that can immediately answer your question. So yun yung purpose, no. So those are the things that I've been doing for the past few, and of course, diba, participating in forums, and yan, itong mga uh
Interviews.
interviews and answering questions, no? So one of the things I like doing is really answer questions, no? Because it makes things really more conversational, and it's also very helpful, no, for some people. Kasi on the side, I really answer questions for Viber, from Facebook Messenger, diba? Every now and then something pops up, and people will ask questions about this, for example, and give you the scenario, and expect you to give the magic answer in terms of their particular questions.
Actually, right now, okay, so HR is actually at the center of the organization because there are a lot of changes, diba? And one
Mm,
of which is actually the reason we had this episode. So maybe at this point in your organization's life, you're revisiting your policies. So
mm,
we gave you a checklist, and Ron also gave you guiding principles on how to revise your policies. Okay, so I hope that this was a fruitful Wednesday for you guys. So we suddenly came up with this idea to have like tips on HR, on writing HR policies. And if you have more questions, don't hesitate to write in the comment section. So thank you, Ron, for joining us in the middle of the week.
yeah.
And
Thank you also. Thank you very much again for inviting me. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, so don't forget, guys. Okay, there is one webinar. There are webinars. Okay, in Ariba. Okay, where Ron is. You can catch Ron Turla, and also I've actually typed the URL of his website, so you can also download and buy copies of his book HR Compass. It's actually very helpful, and I do hope that you will use it as a reference, okay, or
Mm.
invest in it as a reference. Okay. Thank you, Ron. Okay.
Thank
And
you.
okay, so we will now have a temporary goodbye, and then we will have another FB Live presentation, maybe this Saturday. And I hope to see you guys soon. Okay, so good evening, and thank you for joining us. Okay, thank you for
Thank you.
joining us. I know you're all busy. Okay, bye bye.
Bye.
During the pandemic, why don't you upskill in the comforts of your own home? Improve and add more certificates in your resume. Simple, direct, easy. Visit the playlist in our YouTube channel. Browse through our videos and choose the video that interests you. Send in your requests for a particular video and we will send back the certificate via email. Watch this full video for the details.